Potter.
Scotty B going to work in the paint.
Eastern Conference Final. New NBA champion. And it's a team from Toronto, Canada. We, the North, are now we, the champions.
What is going on, Raptors Nation? It is Luca here back with the Raptors Nation podcast. Hope you're all doing well on this January 30th. It's going to be a winning month for the Toronto Raptors. Who would have thought? But this team, they have turned the corner out of nowhere. And in today's pod, I'm going to talk about the Raptors and what they've been able to do. And then we're going to take a look at the Raptors trade deadline and their approach ahead of the trade deadline. 1 week from today, the trade deadline is going to happen. Well, at this time, next week, it's going to be already over. But before February 6th, 3 p.m. Eastern, that is when the trade deadline buzzer will sound. We'll see how busy the Raptors get before that deadline. A lot of rumors are popping up. Going to be interesting. And we'll see how active the Raptors get when it comes to the trades. But before we dive right into it, do me a solid, guys. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And don't forget to leave this podcast a 5-star review. You can find this pod over on Apple iTunes and Spotify. So the biggest development of this Raptors season has been their turnaround. This team, not too long ago, looked left for dead. They had the second worst record in the league. They were coming off a 5-game losing streak. They had a lot of losing under their belt in the month of December, but they go on their most recent losing streak. Emmanuel quickly goes down in that game against the Pistons, and it did not look good for this team. I mean, it did look good for this team in terms of their draft lottery position because at that point, they were reeling, they lost quickly again, and they were going to go up against a pretty tough stretch of games. So I was there thinking, like, that's it. Raptors are toast. There's no way they're going to come out of this looking good. There's no way they're going to win some games here. Maybe they'll win 1 or 2. But I did not expect what happened next. The Raptors are the hottest team in the league. I can't believe I'm saying that, but right now they have the longest active winning streak along with the New York Knicks at 5. This team is rolling 5 wins in a row. They're 7-1 in their last 8. 7-1 since Emmanuel quickly went down again and since Davion Mitchell got inserted into the starting lineup, and they have the best defense in the association over that span. It's been a remarkable turnaround, thanks in large part to a rejuvenated defense, one that was operating at a franchise low in December. They were getting decimated, it seemed, game to game and making franchise history for all the wrong reasons. And now you flip to January, they're going to have their first winning month in a while. They have their first 5-game winning streak since 2021-2022. And this team is now closer to a play-in spot than the bottom. With their latest win, the Raptors are 4.5 games out of the 10th spot in the East. And by the way, they play the Chicago Bulls next. So if the Raptors win that game, I guess you can say the push to the play-in is officially on. Like, what the hell is going on right now? But this team is just playing well. And again, it's in large part to the defense. And you got to credit Scotty Barnes because right now he's playing the best defense of his life. 15-year vet Garrett Temple praised Barnes in a piece that Josh Lewenberg recently wrote. He's been playing elite on both ends. And I got to say it, like, Davion Mitchell's insertion in the starting lineup has made a world of difference. And it's really now putting the magnifying glass on IQ Grady Dick backcourt, because I don't know if they can now look as good defensively with that backcourt. We saw a lot of, I know there wasn't a big enough sample size to properly judge it, but when you have Davion Mitchell in the backcourt, there's more balance because now he's taking more of the responsibility on ball, blowing up screens, point of attack defense. And now Barnes can kind of be more of that free safety defender, which is more natural for him in the second layer. And then you got Jakob Poeltl around the rim, just adding another defensive barrier. So we see it. Like this starting five with Davion Mitchell is operating much better defensively. And it is just, there's more balance. And, offensively, they have shared the ball very well, creating good open looks. But, you go back to it, and I'm not trying to blame Quickly or anything, but it's just crazy to see how Quickly goes down. You have a defensive-minded first guard inserted in the starting lineup, and this team looks significantly better. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think Quickly's in a tough spot because if he comes back and this team starts losing, he's going to get the blame and it's going to create crazy narratives. So I actually feel bad for him. But once Quickly comes back, it's like with how well Mitchell is clicking in this starting lineup, what do? You're not benching Quickly. You just paid him all that money. You can't ask him to come from off the bench. So Davion Mitchell is likely going to head back to the bench, but then we'll see how this team looks defensively when you have an IQ Grady Dick backcourt. But for right now, things are clicking defensively. Mitchell deserves a lot of credit. Barnes, of course, deserves a lot of credit because he's just locked in. He's focused. RJ Barrett, like the defense has been a team effort, and the effort level is there every single game. The Raptors look night and day compared to the Wizards in their most recent win. That game was over after the first few minutes when the Raptors went up 14-0. Like this team is just a nightmare to deal with on the defensive end. And the numbers don't lie. It's a much better team when Barnes is out there defensively. And overall, this is the best defense in the league over their last 8. That is just unreal. So that begs the question now, is the tank dead? The Raptors, who are closer to the play-in now than the bottom of the standings, and let me just say this, no one's catching the Wizards. Like, it's done. The Wizards are ending the season with the worst record. That team, I don't think, is going to win more than 10 games. But the Raptors are now closer to the play-in spot than the bottom. So is that it? Is this team done in terms of tanking? And quite frankly, I don't know. I really don't know what the priority of this team is right now, what they're thinking, what Masai is thinking, seeing this. I think we're going to know definitively the answer to this question in the next week or so, because for starters, the Raptors, they do have a tough stretch coming up. So maybe this is their back to reality moment, because after the Bulls, they got the Clippers, Knicks, Grizzlies, Thunder, Rockets, Sixers, Cavs going into the All-Star break. So let's just say the Raptors go on to win 6 in a row. They beat the Bulls, but then they lose 7 in a row or 6 of their next 7. That maybe makes it easier than coming out of the All-Star break, what the approach of this team is going to be. So we'll see how they look in that stretch. But you look at their schedule towards, I would say, middle March, end of March to April, it's very lenient. I mean, the Raptors do have, I believe, the easiest remaining schedule, or one of the easiest remaining schedules. So it's definitely going to lighten up towards the back end. So again, that's going to be a crucial point, because if the Raptors look good during that stretch over their next 7 after this Bulls game, like, the tank's officially dead. But if, again, they fall back to reality, then maybe they come out of the All-Star break looking to tank. But it's like, how do you tank? Because I don't think this team is going to go down the route of resting guys, because they haven't done that to this point. Like, Scotty hasn't gotten a night off. RJ hasn't gotten a night off. And it was pretty telling to me when the Raptors took on the Pelicans, which was a very important game in the reverse standings. If you guys noted, Jakob Poeltl was questionable with, I think it was a back strain. So I thought for sure they were going to sit him out. But the fact that they, and, just give him the night off, but the fact that they actually made him play in that game, which was important for the reverse standings, and they won, I don't think the Raptors are going down that route in terms of making phantom injuries and sitting guys out and going that route, especially for now. So the other part of it in conjunction to their upcoming schedule, is what is this team going to do at the deadline? And I think this will be the biggest tell of where they're at for the remainder of the season, because the Raptors trade deadline will be pivotal, and we'll see if this team gets aggressive or not. We know the Raptors are always involved in a lot of trade rumors when it comes to the deadline. Are they going to do something, or are they going to stand pat? And let's get into the Raptors trade deadline, because I think this is going to be the big tell of what happens with their tank, or if they want to tank for the rest of the season. And I do not believe the Raptors are going to be buyers in any way. This is going to be a seller. I know there's the rumor of Brandon Ingram. I don't think a trade for Ingram or De'Aaron Fox is going to happen. Josh Lewinberg even said it. It's the normal thing for the Raptors to do, to just check in whenever a star is available. But I don't think you got to worry about this team trading RJ Barrett or Emmanuel Quickley. Like, they're not going anywhere. They're staying put for now. I also don't see them moving Jakob Poeltl, because it was reported by Dan Woke that the Raptors reportedly want a first-round pick, maybe even 2 for Poeltl. And they are resisting a lot of interest from other teams that want Poeltl. And you look at the Raptors, they're thin with their front court. Poeltl's been very valuable to them. I don't see them trading Poeltl. And Grange even reported this earlier. The Raptors believe they can bounce back next season. So you need a center. You need Jakob Poeltl. So I don't think they're going to trade him. So I do think the Raptors are going to be sellers. And the question is, how aggressive of a seller are they going to be? Because to get back into that tanking range, you're going to have to offload some of these veteran players who are helping you win games right now. Because along with the defense and their improvement, it's been the bench play. The Raptors have gotten consistent bench play. This is like bench mob 2.0, and it's been guys like Brown, Boucher, Shed, Olynyk, and 3 out of those 4 names are players who I expect the Raptors to try to trade. Mark Stein reported that there is interest in Olynyk. I would probably put him at less likely as those other 2 names, just because the Raptors don't have a whole ton of center depth, and you need a backup big to Poeltl. I mean, unless they're absolutely sold by Orlando Robinson, who has done a good job, inking his second 10-day contract. I don't see them parting ways with Olynyk for now, especially since they're thin in that position. So the other 2 are Boucher and Brown, and both those guys have been big respectively during this Raptors run. Boucher has been an igniter of that second unit. Bruce Brown has looked much better as of late. So those are players who I see the Raptors trying to trade, and I would put the most likely being Boucher, just because it's easier to move his $10.8 million contract. I will be very surprised if Boucher's still on this basketball team this time next week. Bruce Brown's the trickier one because of the $23 million. And I think the only way really you can trade Brown at this point is if the Raptors do get involved in a larger trade and help facilitate a trade for Jimmy Butler. And remember, they have been linked to that a ton, going back to a few weeks now. First reported by Doug Smith of the Toronto Star that the Raptors are trying to be a facilitator. And, you look at what they have in some of these expiring contracts in Brown and Boucher, that's how you offload those contracts and you get paid in draft capital. So I see them moving Brown if they're involved in a larger deal. But if that doesn't develop, and let's just say a Butler trade doesn't happen, I think the most likely candidate is Boucher. And look, you take away Boucher, you're taking away arguably their best bench piece, or at least he's played like it over their last little bit. And then if you take away Brown, you're depleting the depth of this team even more. So that's how I see the Raptors salvaging this tank, by offloading pieces at the deadline and then coming out of that All-Star break. Maybe they start strategically playing the younger guys more, and maybe you do more of the phantom injuries and stuff like that. But right now, they're not showing like they're interested in doing that. This team has been competing hard. They're winning. And Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett, they have been doing a great job of holding this fort down and then some. Like, they have really done wonders together And this thing is starting to come together nicely for this team. So the trade deadline, again, just to recap here, I don't expect the Raptors to be a seller in any way. A buyer in any way. Ingram, De'Aaron Fox, all that stuff is just noise at this point. I fully expect them to be a seller. And the question is, how aggressive of a seller? I don't expect them to trade Jakob Poeltl. I don't expect them to trade Kelly Olynyk just because they're thin there right now with their center position. I don't expect them to trade Davion Mitchell, honestly. He's been really good for this team lately. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I know he's an expiring deal as well, but I'd be shocked right now, given how things have played out over the last bit, that they trade Mitchell. So the two likeliest trade candidates, in my opinion, for this team, Bruce Brown, Boucher, with Boucher being the easier one to move. And what the Raptors do at the deadline, I think will tell you what their approach is going to be in terms of the tank. And let me just classify it here. Like the Raptors, what I mean by tank is they're not catching the Wizards. Like that's done. And I think we can all agree, no matter how bad the Raptors end up being from here on out, it could be putrid. Nobody's catching the Washington Wizards. So the Wizards are finishing with the worst record in the NBA. We're making that foregone conclusion here. But when you look at the reverse standings, which is what I'm looking at right now, it's Wizards, Jazz, Pelicans, Hornets, Nets, who have jumped into the top 5. And the Raptors right now have the 6th worst record in the reverse standing. So the Raptors can still catch the Nets, the Hornets, but they've been dealing with some injuries, and the Pelicans. For the sake of it, I'll even say the Raptors aren't going to catch the Jazz, who only got 10 wins at this time. So they can still catch the Nets, Hornets, and Pelicans and potentially put themselves in that bottom 3. But it's going to be tough because the Nets and the Hornets look destined for the bottom, more so the Nets, because they have even come out and said it, that they're interested in tanking. So, I mean, even from that perspective, even if the Raptors finish with the 4th, 5th worst record, I'd still rather take that than if they go the other way and they are a playing team, or they're just short of the play-in and you're kind of in that middle ground, and now all of a sudden you're picking, call it 7 to 10, as opposed to 5, 6, 7. So that's where I'm at this point, because I know it's going to be tough at this point to get into the bottom 3. But if you can still get 5, 6, 7 versus 7, 8, 9, 10, I think that makes a massive difference. And we'll see what this team's approach is, because if this team continues to win, they look good in that tough stretch. Maybe they only move Boucher, and they keep Brown because it's tough to move him. I think at that point, they might actually go for the play-in, because the Bulls are probably going to falter down. You know, the 76ers are going to move on up. They're continuing to do so. But I think by default, the Raptors are going to move on up. And it's like with Quickly, like, we don't have any timetable for his return. And I guess that's the concerning part about him, because he's missed a lot of time. We don't even know how much he's going to miss with this recent injury, but you would assume at some point he's back, like maybe in the next month at least. So they are going to add another piece, and that way, and then that's going to help them compete. But yeah, overall, you know, I've been vocal. I'm not going to beat a dead horse about where I stand with this tank. I do think it's in the best interest of this team to play the lottery game. Like I just said, I'd rather 4 or 5. At least you got a shot at getting into the top 3 at that point than playing that middle ground of where, like, you're around that playing spot in the play-in. Because for this team to make the play-in and just get ousted in a one-and-done scenario, or let's just say they win 2 road games, you're getting swept in the first round anyway, whoever you take on. Maybe you steal one against Cleveland or the Knicks or Boston. And I guess you can, you know, make the argument from that perspective. It's like, at least they would gain valuable experience and valuable reps, but I'd much rather add another young talent, another young kid with upside. And then next season, you're in a really good position. Because, like, that's the thing here. Like, if you're a Raptors fan and you're like, I'm trying to sell you on this, the Raptors only got to be bad for half more of a season. After this, you're not entertaining tank anymore. Like, next season, if you add a top prospect, next season, you're going after it. Like, there's no more talk about a tank. You're playing. You're really trying to figure things out. You're going for it. So, I mean, to eat for like 30 plus more games is not the worst thing in the world. But again, we'll see what this team ultimately decides to do. Masai's in charge. He said it many times. He is not a fan of the play-in, although he went against that couple years ago when they went for it by trading for Pirtle. And it's just crazy how things played out, right? Because it's like they went for it for the Wemby draft class. They tanked properly last season when the draft class was considered the weakest one in years. And now that there's another generational top-heavy draft class, it's like they're fumbling that again. So the logic doesn't make sense to me, but we'll see what Masai has up his sleeve if he has plans of salvaging this tank. But right now, with the way the team is playing, they do not look like a tanking team. They look like a team pushing for the play-in. But we will know our more definitive answer, I would say, in the next few weeks. So interesting times for sure. You got the whole tank narrative. Should the Raptors tank? Should they not tank? Are they too good to tank? Playing out. And then while that's going on, you got the trade deadline of all these rumors surfacing. And how are the Raptors going to operate at the trade deadline? Are they going to be an aggressive seller? And who's going to be on this team at this time next week? I like, these are all fascinating things that will be answered in the next week or so. So let me know your thoughts, guys. Where do you stand on all of this with the tank talk? And also, what do you see the Raptors doing at the trade deadline? Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is it for me. This is Luke signing off. Thanks so much for watching. I will catch you all again in the next one.